Hello and welcome, I'm Chris Hall and this is Hall's Variety Pack Off the Record, and yet again we're here talking about Doctor Who. I still have not come up with some wacky, hilarious, wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey name for this little sub-show that I do, so for the meantime it is still Off the Record, hooray! And yet again, Doctor Who time, yes indeed. Oh my, well, what can we say about this week's episode? It was certainly a thing. Now, this episode, I have to say, in wholehearted honesty, was very, very difficult for me to write some notes for because, well, it's not because the episode was so unbelievably terrible that I had a hard time actually confounding all my anger and rage onto paper, nor is it because the episode was so wonderfully fantastic that I couldn't find the words to describe how wonderfully fantastic it was. It was because this episode is oh so very well, I think we should say here and now, before we actually get into the nitty-gritty of this little review critique thing, that this episode will include spoilers. I tried to keep these episodes and these things that I do as spoiler-free as I can, though I cannot really guarantee that it won't be, because this is effectively a big ramble for me for the next 20 minutes or so. So if you do not want this episode ruined, then this is probably not the video for you. There are no doubt loads of wonderful, brilliant produced videos to the left of me if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're not, then wherever on YouTube there will be some fantastic videos which probably won't ruin Doctor Who for you, but you know, if you've seen it and you want to know what little old me thinks about it, keep watching. If not, then switch off now. Okay, from this point on we are going to talk about spoilers and such, so here we go. A little bit of a brief plot synopsis of the episode. The episode is the Doctor and Clara are in Clara's flat. Then all of a sudden, oh dear, we appear to be in space. Oh my. Oh, we're at a table with a man with loads of metal in his head and a woman with wibbly wobbly face. Oh, now Doctor has to rob a bank for reasons unknown, but only because he doesn't remember why those reasons and what those reasons are. They break into the bank, we meet a purple people eater who eats people's memories, and a woman with ginger hair who is not that nice. Will the Doctor and co rob the bank, or will something bad happen? We could only wish that something bad would happen, because at least that would be something. Okay, so suffice it to say, I'm not a fan of this episode. Though with that said, there's nothing within it that was spectacularly dumb. Once again, the opening episode to this series remains the worst one for me. For yourselves, it may be a different episode. It may well be this episode. Whatever it is, you know, put it down in the comment section of whatever internet area, web portal that you're watching this, and maybe say whether or not you like this episode, or whether you loved it or hated it or are totally indifferent to it, or if you just want anything to raise, just put it in the comment section. I should have really put this at the head of the video, but I'll say it now. The episode, like I said in the ramble up to this bit, was just a bit bland for me. There's nothing within it that was spectacularly dumb like we had in the first episode. There was no example early in my lungs bit, and there was no tear down the side of the cheek bit, because, well, at least that would be something. This episode was so utterly vanilla for me, it was obscene. No, not even vanilla. I'd say that this is the Doctor Who televisual equivalent of a bottle of water. It doesn't really, not even a bottle of water, just air. Not even air. I mean, even air fulfilled some kind of need. It was just this great effervescent nothingness. I mean, the episode wasn't terrible, it wasn't bad, it was just a thing. Just horribly forgettable. Now, one of the things that did stick in my mind, one of the few things that did stick about my mind, and sorry for the 3D effect then, one of the few things that did stick in my mind about this episode was the editing. Now, I don't know whether this was the case for everyone. It may well have been ironed out in the iPlayer repeat, or one of the other repeats. I don't know whether they still do a repeat on BBC Three, if they ever did. But one of the problems this episode had was horrible sound mixing. Of course, this is a problem that the BBC has had for fucking decades, and they're still not sorted it out, in which the sound quality can vary so much between shows. This episode was very, very, very mumbly and very low into the mix was everything, so you had to turn it up, which meant as soon as I put on an action film shortly after it, everyone in the room went momentarily deaf, which is a bad point. The other bad point is that there's some very, very odd editing in this week's episode. A lot of the scenes just kind of faded and moulded together. There's this very, very weird crossfade effect that we got with certain scenes, and it made it all the more confusing as the links between those scenes were only maybe a couple of minutes apart, so why you need such an elaborate transition, I don't really know. For reality's sake, it was no different in its construction to when you had what the old Batman series were in, when you had the symbol that would float forward and loads of spinny whirly things. It's more or less the same thing, but with this it felt totally unnecessary. Just a quick snap to the next scene or a slight fade. You didn't need the whole dying effect when you're in Call of Duty with everything going blurred out and weird colours. No, you didn't need that. I mean, really? Good grief. The episode itself, moving away from the episode, like I say, was incredibly bland, though there was a twist to the episode. A big twist to the episode, which I won't give away. One of the few spoilers I won't give away. However, it was incredibly predictable about midway through the episode. If you didn't already get it, a little conversation that the Doctor and Clara had kind of gave it all away. There was another minor twist with it, which I'm not entirely sure whether I liked or I hated. I kind of liked it because the characters involved with it, I thought, were good characters. The two people that the Doctor does the heist with along with Clara, I don't remember the names. It's the guy with the augmented cyber stuff and the weird shape-shifty lady. I thought they were great little characters, perfectly fine, better than most little temporary companions that the Doctor's had. Great and awesome, but the weird twist involving them I'm not really sure on, because it kind of took any bite from the episode out from it. And this episode really needed a bite to it. It really needed essential things to make it a little bit more than just a wacky, runny and pointy dun 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 episode, which I kind of said last week I thought it was going to be. Though this episode wasn't the running dun 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 pointing at stuff thing, it very nearly was. Which, yes, fans of the new Doctor Who may like that, I myself don't, but whatever. One of the problems I had with this episode is that one of the many problems I had with this episode is that the bad guy in this was kind of, like the episode itself, a bit bland. I mean, the lady that played the role I thought was great. I thought she performed the role itself well, but her as a bad guy didn't really do anything for me, because she wasn't herself evil. She was a bit aggressive, a bit too assertive maybe, but really she was just doing her job. She's the person that's in charge of security, or the manager, or whatever you want to call it, for this intergalactic space bank, and it is supposed to be the most secure bank in the galaxy or universe. They keep mixing between the two, but there's not really about her that was necessarily evil. It's not like she was killing people because it was helping her to attain some evil, wicked, twisted end, and it wasn't because she enjoyed killing, it was just her job. She was effectively the head of security in a place where killing was part of the job, and she was the bad guy because of that. So it's kind of like in the first episode when I had the weird cyborg man, except a little bit different, as this character is a little bit more evil. She has a little bit more of a depth and a personality to her, whereas the cyborg man in the first episode didn't. But it's another case of a bad guy who's bad seemingly just because the writer says that they're bad, and because killing is bad. Okay. That certainly seems to be the tone of most Doctor episodes, even the Doctor himself, least we forget, has killed more things than anything else in existence. Good grief. And one of the things I found weird about it was that towards the end of the episode, and this is getting up to a bit of a big spoiler, so yes, once again, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. It turns out that the person that we thought was the bad guy, is in fact a clone. The real bad guy has been lurking in one of the vaults, and it's the same person, except not wearing the glasses, I think, or maybe she was. Honestly, I don't think it makes much of a difference. But the only reason we can say that she's bad is because she kills the clone that we've seen for the majority of the episode. So effectively, the bad guy is killing the bad guy, thus making the new bad guy badder. Oh, how dare she kill the bad guy? Gah. And oh yeah, of course, and another spoiler, this is probably the big spoiler episode, the weird purple people eater alien hammerhead shark looking fella is not the last of his species. There is a second one locked up, also in the weird orange space jacket, looking like he's just escaped from Guantanamo Bay, also in a cupboard somewhere off screen with the crappiest looking lock in the history of science fiction, and she's kidnapped her or him or whatever the other one is don't think they really have sexes, these monsters. And she's manipulating the purple people eater, brain eater monster to do wicked things, and oh wait, and another spoiler. It's her in the future who's now old and grey and got the crappy wrinkly facey makeup has suddenly decided, oh, you know what, maybe looking up the last two of a particular species might not have been the most wizard thing in the world to do, so let's save them. So we've got a bad guy who doesn't really do much, who at the very end of the episode kind of redeems themselves, so they've kind of not really done anything. In fact, nothing really happens in the episode of great impact to anything. Only one character dies off, and that's effectively a red shirt character just there to say, oh, isn't this monster scary? When it really isn't. Now, I was going to talk a little bit more about the monster in the bit that I just did, but I think it's good to actually talk a little bit more in depth as to why I don't find the monster in this at all scary at all. Much like the bad guy, except to a lesser degree, this is a monster which has no evilness to it. Like I say, the bad guy is bad because she's aggressive and assertive and she kills things. Whereas the monster, yes, he kills things, but he only kills them because his mate has been locked up in a store cupboard off camera, and then we find it in a cupboard, and then, oh, what a tearful reunion that was. Fantastic. Blimey. Stephen Moffat, you genius. Good grief. But still, one of the problems I have with the monster is that there's nothing really about it that's at all threatening. If we forget the ending bit of it, what do we have as a monster here? It is a monster which is very slow, very plodding. It's not some snarling evil creature. It just goes about with a bit of a glum face of it plodding around. It's not really a monster that is that scary in its design, and it's not really helped by the fact it is so slow. I mean, it's a giant purple people eater with stalk eye things that mumbles and lumps about. You couldn't get surprised for it because just how big it is. It's a giant purpley bluey monster in a big orange jumpsuit clunking around in chains. If you didn't see it, you'd hear it, and yeah, if it caught you, yeah, you're screwed, but still, you could clear your mind and go blank or whatever the doctor says, and that at least buy you a couple of minutes so your friend could just come along and kick the monster in the jimmy or something. I mean, good grief. As a monster itself, as a scary monster, it's not scary because it's so utterly plodding and slow, and if we include the fact that it's only doing what it's doing because it's being manipulated, then it's got even less to be afraid of. I mean, look, this is an episode itself which wasn't that impressive, but it's one of those episodes which hangs by a thread that is either made or lost by the quality of the bad guy and or monster. The problem with this episode is that the bad guy is only bad because the people writing it say it is, and we have a monster which is only evil because at some point it kills somebody. And it does it in a vaguely creepy way. And that's just really about it. There's nothing to the episode that makes it particularly successful. This is a bug-eyed monster episode in which our bug-eyed monster is only vaguely bad. This isn't really good enough, let's be honest. It's an episode which lives or dies by the quality of its bad guy. We have a vaguely evil bad guy and a somewhat ambiguous monster. It simply isn't good enough. Okay, so that's pretty much the construction of the episode. The actual episode itself, incredibly vanilla, incredibly forgettable. What about the performances? Well, spoiler alert, Peter Capaldi still good as the Doctor, nothing else has to be said. Jenny Coleman, however, as Clara, this episode I didn't think she was good as she's been in previous episodes. Not to say that she did anything that was bad, or she did anything that made her seem less of a good character, but maybe it's just simply the fact that there was more people in the episode that we couldn't really focus so much on her and her performance. I mean, there was not really much for her to do, as all the pointing, oh, Doctor, what's that, what's this, role was pretty much fixed by the robot tin man augmented human guy and the woman with the shape-shifty wibbly-wobbly face. That's pretty much it. She filled the role that the companion fills, which is to point and go, oh, Doctor, isn't that creepy, and oh, what's going on, bit, which she does and everyone else does, so She doesn't really do anything. As a character, she didn't really do anything. She's not really grown or changed or developed as a character. She's much as she was before. And there was, and I just thought of it now, a similar moment once again. Dramatic pause, stifling a burp, to the first episode, in which in the first episode we have the robot tin men, cyborg people who can't tell if you're a cyborg or not if you're not breathing. So if you hold your breath, then you just go, oh, this person's not a robot, let us go somewhere else and do something evil, click, 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 and walks off. With this one, it's a similar thing, but with the monster, if you just stop thinking, it will not be able to sense you, which is apparently very difficult to do. I honestly haven't tried it. And in a similar way, in which that first episode we have the close-up shot of their face, looking if their eyes going to pop out. But this time, instead of it because they're holding the breath, it's because they're clearing the mind, which means we have all kinds of hazy filters and stuff on the scene to make it, oh, isn't this creative? Please give us another BAFTA for Best Television Drama next year. Oh. Bloody hell. Oh, God, I'm getting back into the editing stuff. This bit's supposed to be about the performance, about the Doctor and the companion, but Doctor once again, yay. Clara, slightly yes, less yay, but still okay. I mean, once again, I say this every episode, whenever I saw Clara in this, in the different forms and characters that she has been, I never liked her. It's only in this series I've kind of liked her as a companion. And I do hope that she sticks with it. I've heard some rumours that she might not do, or things are going to change and go, later on in the series. But whatever, I really like her as a companion now. I like her now. I didn't like her for most of the time with Matt Smith, but now she's with Peter Capaldi. I really like her. I hope nothing bad happens to her. Next week is an episode we have Mr. Pink in again, and I like them as an on-screen couple. I know that last week some people got a little bit vexed by the little exchange that the both of them had in the restaurant. I thought it was perfectly fine. I thought it was probably one of the better relationships and better scenes of a relationship that we had in Doctor Who in a very long time, possibly ever. Now that's a massive accolade, but still. In that regard, I hope that nothing bad happens to those two characters, though. Like I said last week, if everything does, I won't be happy because I like those two characters as a couple, and also because I'd already seen it coming. So, overview? Okay, so the overview, and I've kind of already said what I need to say in the previous bit, and for most of this video bit, which is that the episode itself was just very bland and forgettable. I still haven't thought of a food substance or drink with which to do an allegory. If it's not vanilla, because vanilla actually has some taste and substance to it. It's not water, because water fills a very necessary need. And it's not oxygen, because even though that has no taste to it whatsoever, it still fills a necessary need. This episode fills no necessary need whatsoever. And whilst last week I did kind of say that last week's episode felt like a filler episode, only due to the fact there was no real connection to the main story arc, I did concede that many things were introduced in the episode may well be dealt with and investigated later on in the series. With this one, there's absolutely no link to the Promised Land or any suggestion that anything within that episode could link to that story arc. So this episode just, more than anything else, just sits very, very stark amongst the rest of it. Now, with that said, as empty and vacuous as an episode is, it wasn't offensively bad. It's still not as bad as the first episode of this series. It's still a solid, good episode whilst you're watching it. When you walk away from it, then you suddenly start to realise, well, actually, it didn't really work because, well, it's just a little bit too empty. I mean, you can't even go into the full thing of, well, this episode didn't work because this, and this, because within a few hours of watching it, you kind of forgotten about it. That's like I said towards the start of this video thing, is that one of the main problems that I had with writing this one was not because it was a terrible episode, and I was just so turned off by it that I can't fit everything on paper, and it's not because this episode was so fantastic that I don't have anything to say about it, as in terms of flaws and criticisms and stuff, because I still found the Robin Hood episode enjoyable, but there's still flaws with it. With this episode, there was just nothing about it, either good or bad. It was a wholly neutral episode, much like the monster in this, a wholly neutral entity that only really does bad stuff because it's made to do bad stuff. Our bad guy, once again, is only bad because the people writing the episode say that she's bad. I mean, would it have been so hard to have given her a little bit of a bite and an edge to it? And I am going to give away a spoiler in regard to that mini twist in the episode, just because of here, just to show how utterly inconsequential this episode generally feels, is that the two people that the Doctor does the heist with aren't killed off. We think that they're killed off because the Doctor and the rest of them, they have these little briefcase things that they open up, which the architect gives to them, which help them out in their journey along the void thing, the bank. What void? Bank. And in one of them, there's like these little hand grenade looking things. And what they do is they turn the little dial thing and they press it against the skin, and they seemingly vaporize, and it's almost like a self-destruct mechanism to stop yourself having your memories wiped by the teller. So we assume that when the cyborg guy and the wibbly wobbly face woman use it, that they've died off. Though it turns out that it wasn't a hand grenade thing, it just teleported them to a ship outside in orbit, and then they teleported back down to help the Doctor. So this is an episode in which the monster, the big scary monster, doesn't actually do anything big or scary, bar killing off one character towards the start of the episode to show that, oh, if you feel at all guilty, then the alarms will go off, and then you'll have your mind wiped. And even then, the whole thing about guilt doesn't really make sense, because they're robbing a bank, so there would be some guilt there. Even if they don't remember exactly why, there still would be some guilt there, because they'd be like, oh, we're robbing from people, we don't know what we're robbing. And the Doctor should have felt some guilt when the wibbly wobbly face woman seemingly vaporized herself, which should have set the alarms off. And when the cyborg augmented guy died, there should have been some more guilt there. Should have been 2 alarms going off to give off the location. Oh, dear me. But whatever. This is an episode with no consequence and no bite to it. The 2 side characters don't get killed off. They're perfectly fine and dandy. Only one character gets killed off. And the suggestion that the clone of the bad guy gets killed off, but whether or not she does, we don't know. So, really, nothing to report on this episode, really. It's just so very, very empty. And I have a nasty feeling that this is a turning point in the series, because for the most part, after the first episode, we had a string of 3 very, very solid, really, really great episodes. The one with the Dalek-ing, yes, it had its troubles, but it was still a fairly interesting episode, even if for all intents and purposes, it was pretty much The Incredible Voyage meets Dalek from Series 1. The second episode, which was the Robin Hood episode, I thought was fantastic. I really enjoyed it, really thought it was enjoyable, whatever. The episode that we had last week, the Listen one, I'm not raving about it. I understand why people like it, and I did enjoy it as a full episode. There was no startling issues with it that made me go, grrr, Stephen Moffat, grrr. This week's episode just feels odd in that there's nothing about it was terrible or good. It just feels incredibly neutral. And I have this feeling that this incredible neutralness, even though potential for going downhill again, is going to start off from now, because next week is an episode which we are in the school, in which the I'm going to say Jenny Colburn, but that's the real name, not the character name, in which Clara works in, and it's going to be another one with Mr. Pink, which one of my friends said, oh great, it looks like we're going back to Grange Hill then. Yeah, it looks like we're going back to Grange Hill with some weird weird robot thing that looks like the alien that everyone loves from Mass Effect, clinking and clonkering about. And I think Frank Skinner's in that. So it's looking like a guest fest next week in Grange Hill. Oh dear. I hope that it's going to be a good one, but I haven't seen suspicion that they could very well be another running and pointing episode. Not to say that this one was, but it felt very close to it. But we'll soon see. Like I said, I thought that the Robin Hood episode was going to be crap, but it turned out to be really good. I thought that the scary episode was going to be crap, but once again, it turned out to be good. I thought this week's episode was going to be crap, but it wasn't. It was just distinctly average. Next week's episode will either be incredibly crap, incredibly good, or incredibly average. Either way, it's going to be incredible. Anyway, so thank you for sticking this thing out. I don't know how long it is. This is effectively just me rambling about Doctor Who for however long. Thank you for watching. If you have anything you want to add to the discussion, maybe any questions you want to ask me or any points you'd like to raise, leave them in the comment section. I will get back to you for next week, because if next week's episode turns out to be so ineffective as this one, I'm really going to need something to talk about. So, without further ado, it's time for me to say goodbye!